Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Honda Classic Data Dive Show. We've got a lot to get into. There's been a few withdrawals. I know of a couple right off the bat. So when we get into the Fantasy National portion, seeing some names will trigger those reminders. But I wanted to mention this last night and simply forgot that next week there are two different tournaments, the Arnold Palmer Invitational and the Puerto Rico Open. With that in mind, I am going to have a full schedule next week. Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday being the usual rotation for the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and then adding a full video Tuesday night for the Puerto Rico Open, which will do some very minimal initial research and then do the data and DFS at least as best we can for a Tuesday night. So be looking forward to that for next week. Otherwise, let's get into it. All statistics tonight are provided by fantasynational.com. Amazing resource. It's the best tool out there, at least in my mind. It's well worth the investment, so go check them out. In the description, there are links to my social media where I post my betting cards and any interesting research that I find throughout the week and during the tournament, as well as an email in the description that will get you in contact with me if you want to be a part of bonus content, bonus videos, my own tournament fact sheet and whatnot. So make sure you reach out to the email in the description if you want to be a part of that. And finally, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. Had some pretty good discussion last night regarding the Genesis and how people performed in DFS. So as we move forward to the Honda, make sure you have your questions ready. Who are you thinking about wagering? This guy or that guy. Any early leans for DFS, or if you just simply want to see some particular stats, make sure you jump in chat there and we'll get into it. So without any further delay, let's dig into the data for the 2022 Honda Classic. And we transition over here, as we always do, to Fantasy National. And the beginning of the show will be me explaining or kind of re-explaining that how I messed up for the Genesis and how I didn't have the fall statistics for the Europeans. I decided to use just this calendar year, so 1/1/22 forward, and players like Rory and Paul Casey, Sergio, those guys were very underrated because they didn't have any stats for 2022 since they hadn't played on the PGA Tour. And I mentioned last night that I was going to go back to the start of the PGA Tour season, to the Fortinet. Well, conveniently, the last 6 months is roughly that time. I believe in this field, I think Tommy Fleetwood and Louis might have some rounds back to, say, the BMW and the Tour Championship if they made it. So I felt like the start of the PGA Tour season would be a good place to go as far back for data. And I mentioned that last night, but digging into it even more today, it was just a pretty good convenient thing that the last 36 rounds for most guys happens to go back to the Fortinet. So let me bring up chat here, and we're gonna do a little bit of a review from last night. We saw in the tournament fact sheet we are in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, at PGA National for the Honda Classic. That is Fast and Lightning Bermuda. So just a quick review here. I'm going to add Bermuda filter, and I'm going to do Fast and Lightning. Well, I thought I was going to. Apparently, I'm just having trouble clicking where I want to. I believe, so there were 13 rounds last night. So the top strokes gained putters on Fast and Lightning Bermuda since the beginning of the PGA Tour season: Brian Gay, Mackenzie Hughes, Zach Johnson, Nick Watney, Brendan Todd, Alex Norn, Brooks Koepka, Andrew Landry, Roger Sloan, and Matthias Schwab. And only because I see his name fairly close here, Cameron Tringali is one of the players that has withdrawn. I know Davis Love III has also withdrawn. I believe there's a couple more, and I'll see them, as we get through the show. It's one of those photographic memory type things. When I see the name, I'll remember it. But there is a look at your top 10 putters on Fast and Lightning Bermuda since the beginning of the PGA Tour season. I'm actually going to expand this out to the last 12 months and get a comparable view for guys that have played perhaps a few more rounds. And that answers your question. 12 months, it's still the same amount of rounds. So very good. I'm just going to keep it at the last 6 months. Perfect. We also looked at some difficult metrics. The Honda Classic PGA National is notorious for being difficult with cut lines, usually in the +3 to +4 area. It is very rare that the winning score gets into double digits. It can, but it's generally 11 or 12. So let's look at some strokes gained difficult. It's always at the top, and I always forget it. So, since the beginning of the PGA Tour season, there are 11 rounds that have been difficult. They are, since the top 10 players in rounds that are difficult. We're going to skip Cameron Tringali. He has withdrawn. So it goes Denny McCarthy, Aaron Rai, Chad Ramey, Patrick Rogers, Russell Knox, Charles Howell III, Sung Jae, Adam Schenk, Mac Hughes, and Alex Smalley. And I just realized this in the putting, so I'll go back and do that, but I had just 2022 clicked. So let's get a fuller view here of strokes gained difficult relative to par. And let's do the last 12 months just to get a fuller picture, see how guys generally play, if they're playing well right now and generally don't, or vice versa. So your top strokes gained total players in the past calendar year in difficult rounds. Again, Tringali would be number one, so we skip him. Louis is number one. Reed, Wise, Streelman, Aaron Rai, Daniel Berger, Brian Harmon, Bezadenhout, Wolf, and Neiman. So I don't remember any of these guys being in the short term. I do see Chad Ramey here. He was in the top 10 in the shortened data sample. There's Alex Smalley. He was 11th. So a little bit interesting there that some guys are playing just better right now as far as when difficult rounds happen. I promise let's do the Bermuda and replay or redo the Fast and Lightning Bermuda. I think I'm going to have a decent idea or remembering who was in the top 10 in the short sample. So this is for Bermuda Fast and Lightning greens in the past calendar year, not just the past 6 months. Your top 10: Zach Johnson, Bezadenhout, McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Patrick Reed, Brian Gay, Ian Poulter, Mac Hughes, Louis, and Harry Higgs. So I remember Bezadenhout being there. I believe Todd was there. I know Mac Hughes was there. So good stuff. Billy Horschel, always a factor on Bermuda greens. There's Cameron Young, who's been playing very, very well lately. So there's a good look there at some of the review. Something else I kind of want to do, and I'm going to bring this back into 6 months here. And as soon as Fantasy National decides to load, take off the Bermuda, take off the Fast, take off the Lightning. PGA National is a very short course. And I went and looked back at the historic conditions a little more closely, and it has almost always measured less than 7,200. There was one year where they had it actually stretched to over 74. But we've looked at difficult. Let's look at short. Let's look at short course metrics. And again, this is just since the beginning of the PGA Tour season. It's 24 rounds exactly, at least at the most. So good, nice round number for Fantasy National purposes. Your top 10 strokes gained total players on short courses. You have Mackenzie Hughes, Denny McCarthy, Keith Mitchell, J.J. Spawn, Charles Howell III, Russell Knox, Bezadenhout, Taylor Moore, Adams Vincent, and Lucas Herbert. And remember, I believe the Bermuda Championship, where Lucas Herbert won, is short as well. And you have Patrick Reed there. You have Tommy Fleetwood just outside the top 10. Sung Jae lurking inside the top 20. So a lot of overlap, to be honest, between the putting and short courses. Knox, Charles Howell, Hughes, and McCarthy. These guys have been popping up quite a bit already. And what I want to do is take off this filter here for the 2022 season. Now that we have the course length, the short metric clicked, I want to add difficult, and I want to see what courses come up here, and see if we can get a gauge on some similar style tracks that some of these guys might be playing. And speaking of next week, there's Bay Hill at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, so that is one course that possibly could be in comparison. We have Cocoa Beach, which I believe is the Puerto Rico. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the Puerto Rican Open. Colonial, Charles Schwab. El Camaleon is Mayakoba. Let's see, Harbortown, Innisbrook, the Copperhead for the Valspar. Well, there goes that. Let's see, Nine Bridges, where they used to play the CJ Cup. Nicholas Tournament Course in at the Amex. Let's see. There's PJ National, PJ West, Kapalua, which I don't understand why that would be short. It's weird. Riviera's not short. See, this is some of the issue that I have, and again, no knock on Fantasy National. It's an amazing tool. I would not be able to do any of this without it. But if one round plays to under 7,200, then the course will come up in the search, and that's why I have been building the Excel spreadsheets to kind of more narrowly focus what I'm wanting to find. So let's take off the difficult and the short metrics. Add the PGA Tour 2022 season. We also looked at strokes gained approach. So let's see, make sure we've got no other filters added. So the top strokes gained approach players: Russell Knox, Mito Pereira, Hudson Swafford, Joaquin Neiman, Lucas Glover, Daniel Berger, Smotherman, Neesmith, Chris Stroud, and Aaron Rye. Chris Stroud's surprising. Let's see what he's been up to, because I don't remember him being high on leaderboards lately. Well, that's why he can't do seemingly anything else, but his irons have been pretty darn good lately. Come back to the Fortinet. He's only lost strokes in one tournament at the RSM. Now his two cuts made have been middling, but the irons have played well. That's about all I can say. So yeah, okay. So there's a look at your top 10 strokes gained approach players. Let's see, Ramey, Bezadenhout lurking just outside the top 10. You've got Louis here, top 20, Sungjae 20th. So good stuff there. We also looked at some specific metrics, say the par threes, proximities and such. So let's go ahead and start really digging in here. And we're going to look at the leaderboards first from the previous seasons, or at least the previous years here at PGA National. And we noticed that last year, off the tee played a pretty decent factor. There were some pretty high finishes and really a lot of middlings if they weren't, top 15s, top 20s and such. VJ down here was the kind of outlier, and he didn't really do much else. I mean, you look here, lost 5 strokes on the greens, but he played well off the tee. So last year was pretty important for off the tee. Approach, clearly, probably number one. Putting was also very, very, very important last year. But if you remember from last night's show, it was a bit of an outlier in terms of how important, or at least the magnitude of importance. So when we go back a couple of years here, let's look at 2020. And generally speaking, approach you see here, I mean, it takes you all the way down to 17th to find anyone negative. Whereas off the tee was hit and miss. You really only have one very poor performance, but he made up for it a bunch in the irons, which is Luke Donald. But, Mac Hughes, second. He was terrible off the tee that tournament, but his irons were good. He apparently scrambled very, very well, and a lot of putting can make up for woes. So let's look at off the tee, and this is more apt to what we saw in the Excel portion last night. You do have some high to middling finishes. You've got a clunker of a made cut, a middling, a miscut. So off the tee was still, fairly important, but it was the approach. You have to come down to, Matthew Neesmith is middling, but you have to come all the way down to maybe Sam Ryder here in the top, maybe 30-ish or so, before you get to a clunker of a made cut, and it's still a made cut. And then we look at putting, not necessarily as strong, not nearly as strong as I should say as 2021, but you still have a decent run of cut makers other than Martin Trainer, who didn't hit an iron shot all week, or in his 2 days, I should say. Let's take a look at 2019 real quick, and I think you'll see more of the same. Off the tee, played a little bit, but you start getting to some pretty high negative figures here once you start hitting the top 20s and such, whereas really there's only one very poor performance with the irons with Wyndham Clark. You've got a pretty bad performance with Bud Cauley. Let's see here. Off the tee, Palmer, Lee, and then middling to clunkers. Approach, to be fair, a clunker led. Then middlings, some top finishes. Those two seem about the same. And then putting, there's a little more stronger correlation, I would say. So we'll confirm all that in Microsoft Excel later as we really, really dig into it. But there's a look at, say, the past 3 years of, the umbrella stats, I call them. The strokes gained, tee, approach, around the green, and putting. This tab here, we did not, at least I did not see too much of a correlation. The strongest was greens in regulation, which generally is anyway. Distance was a little surprising in the sense that it had your cut makers. You did have one miscut in Wyndham Clark, but there was a good run of cut makers, and on a course that is a club down course where you have to be strategic off the tee, you would not think distance would matter. But again, some of these numbers are not the lowest in terms of a full tournament. You come down here to Steve Stricker, who's never been long off the tee, and so on. So, if we go back to 2020 and take a look at driving distance, again, it seems like it's hit and miss, but you've got your cut makers here at the top. Now, is this good for outright wagers? Probably not. But this gives you a decent idea of perhaps some names to consider If you know prices already in DraftKings, I do everything DFS related Wednesday night, so I have no idea about pricing or anything like that. I start that process tomorrow. But there's a good run of cut makers here in the driving distance. And then 2019, let's see. Yeah, I mean, you have even more here. Keith Mitchell, Brooks Koepka, they're generally long off the tee anyway. There's Ryan Armour, never long off the tee. Furyk, never long off the tee. But again, you have one miscut here from Ollie, Luke List. So a little bit less, but you still have a run of, cuts coupled with, your solo second, tie for seventh, your winner. Distance might be something to look at. We'll see as we move through the week. But coming back to 2021 in this tab, you see fairways, you see good drives, and greens. So it's really hard because with good drives being a combination of fairways and greens, my default wants to do this, but sometimes, if it's just fairways, like here, fairways seem to be more important than greens, at least in terms of positive. Quick mental arithmetic seems like the higher numbers on greens. You don't really have any clunker to miss cuts until you come down to maybe Ryan Armour, Taylor Gooch, but you got a good solid 12 to 14 here that are very, very high in the fairways, which are high in middling finishes. Whereas if you go to greens, a lot of the same thing, really. Jim Herman, clunker, you miscut here in Tyler Duncan, but again, more of the same in these very high numbers, which means that probably good drives gained. This is surprising for me because you've got the clunker here, clunker from Herman, and two miscuts from Ben On and Ian Poulter, two more down here. If you think both of these are going to play, you would think this would be the stack that you would want. So very interesting to see that. Good to be honest, that kind of confuses me. I don't understand why that's happening, but it is. Data is what it is. Don't want to go too much into this tab, like I mentioned last night. I just don't see a lot here that we can focus on for the Honda. Let's go to Birdies and Bogies, and this was an interesting find for me during the research today. I went back and looked at the Genesis from this past year, and I was thinking about bringing up Excel. I don't want to keep switching back and forth, but we focused on bogeys avoided last week. And while that was technically correct, it played more important than birdies gained. The biggest stat throughout the whole week was double bogeys avoided. Russell Knox played in it. So I want to show you the Genesis leaderboard here. So let's go to that tab, Birdies and Bogies. Now it doesn't look like much here. You see 0.8s and then negative 0.2s and stuff. You see the bogeys, but if you sort by double bogeys, look, it's almost in order. You do have a few guys that are out of order, but there is a very strong correlation of guys that, like I said, it's just about in order. The bogeys were very important as well. Cameron Young, Collin, Tringali, Thomas, McNeely, C.T. Pan. Birdies as well were important, but you also had your guys sneak up here like Vincent Whaley. He had plenty of birdies, he just had more bogeys. Aaron Rye made the cut to a clunker. So it was interesting to see how much double bogeys played. And on the one hand, it makes a lot of sense. The course can get tough at Riviera, and it's in basically in order here. A lot of your high finishes and middling finishes, but then again, I see the amount here at 0.8. How much does that really matter? So I'm a little torn. Again, I just saw the number that the high finishers all had, good rates and double bogeys. So I checked it again. I'm just kind of torn on it. So how much are we going to pay attention to double bogeys this year? Well, I don't know. We'll see. Like, you have a lot of strong finishers up here, but then you have a bunch of missed cuts. So I don't know. I'm pretty confident that bogeys are going to play more important than birdies, just because this course is so difficult. And you see here in 2021, Nate Lashley, even a middling finish, you have to come down here to Luke Donald, Tom Hoagie, maybe 15 to 20 guys before you get to your missed cuts on bogeys. And it was more of the same in years prior. You come to Birdies and Bogies here. Again, you already have 2 in the negative. Granted, that's just under field average, but a -2 from Wierenski, and bogeys are pretty constant. And it looks like majority of the time, the top 3 are exception, but you've got higher in bogeys avoided than you do birdies gained. So that leads me to believe that bogeys are going to be more important. I mean, you have K.H. Lee here, that's a middling finish. Baker, a middling finish. Other than that, I mean, these guys are performing. Birdies, again, you have Doc Redman up there, high, missed the cut. You do have a lot of high finishes, so I don't know. I still think it's bogeys, but would welcome your input. Jump in chat. If you're not able to catch the show live, jump in the comments. What are you thinking? This is 2019 bogeys versus birdies. Again, 2, negative, but let's just say field average almost. And then the bogeys though are pretty high numbers. So, you got your runner up, top 15s, clunker here, clunker there. Yeah, birdies is more apt in 2019. Yeah, so not sure which way I'm going to focus there. My initial inclination is bogeys avoided, but we'll see. What I really wanted to get into, though, we saw how important the par 3s were last night in the graphical view, in the Excel portion of the show, and we're going to really dive into that now. Here's 2021's leaderboard, the par 3 efficiency. We saw how Christopher Ventura was up there and missed the cut, but after him, you've got a big string of, high finishes to middling, save William McGirt, who had a clunker. And if we can find a range maybe to focus on, it doesn't look like it's the 150 to 175. Granted, no holes here at PGA National measure that on the scorecard. It's when they move the tees around and such, but doesn't look like it's this range. You've got 3 clunkers and then 2 missed cuts. If it's 175 to 200, again, not really. Your leader, Ventura, missed the cut. Donald missed the cut. Some middling finishes here. 200 to 225, no, not really. A little bit more on the higher end of success, but look at all these missed cuts here. So is it the long ones? There you go. That seems to be, if there is a range that matters, it looks to be the 225 plus. But again, look at the numbers. You only had 3 guys above 1, and the rest of these are at 0.1. How much does it matter? It's only 0.1. Leads me to believe that it's just the par 3s. And again, going back a few years, we will see that the par 3s are extremely important. Sort it there, second, fourth. Top 35, you might want to call that middling, which would be fair. Third, first, 3 more top 15s, a top 20. And Sean O'Hare here had a missed cut, about 12 to 13 down, and then another run of high to middling finishes. We check the range. Again, 0.2, does that really come into play? 150 to 175, a little bit more than the previous year, but still nothing great. 175 to 200. Now this was a lot stronger than the previous year. And you have 2 of the 4 par 3s on the scorecard to measure here. 220 to 225, again a little bit. But again, it leads me to believe it's just the par 3s in total, and they are extremely important. Last one here, par 3s. Now you did have Brooks and Bud Cauley play them fairly poorly in 2019, but again, your winner was the leader in strokes gained par 3. You had a top 5, Danny Lee, middling. Your runner-up, top 10, a top 20, a top 20. You had some miscuts up here. That's for sure. Let's see, 150 to 175. Not really. 175 to 200. Stronger, but you still had your miscuts in here. And then the other ranges, you got your cut makers. 225, cut makers. So again, I'm just seeing par 3s. All of the par 3s being the big factor. Let's move to par 4s. And before we get into the detail there, we'll remember the whole composition here from the course breakdown. There were no, plurality or dominant length of par 4s here at PGA National. You had 3 short-ish par 4s, 4 in each of these buckets, and then 1 very long one. So not a length of par 4 to really, at least from a graphical view, focus on. But I did find the range that led to the most leaderboard success. So this is 2021. Again, you see just how important these strokes gained par 4 are. You have to come down to T19 before you find a negative in the leaderboard, and then some more positive. So you sort that. Winner, top 20, middling, to be fair, top 10, top 15, middling, pretty strong. 350 to 400 was pretty strong this year. You do have 3 of the 12 par 4s measure in this range. It was fairly strong, and I thought this might have been it. It's actually the 400 to 450. Minus this year, we'll see that it is this year's an outlier with these 2 miscuts. Streelman, Chase Koepka, Matt Jones, these guys played this range well. So far we have 2 pretty strong ones here. The 350 to 400 is actually the strongest in 2021. If we check the 450 to 500, Nick Taylor was your leader at this range, and he missed the cut. You do have some high finishes, but not too far before you get some miscuts. Let's check 2020. You go to the par 4s, if I can stop highlighting that. Par 4s, again, just look at not just the fact that they're positive, the amounts of the positives. 6, 4, 7, 6, 7, 10, or 11. You got to come all the way down here to T35 before you even find somebody that's negative. That's why I'm a big proponent that the stroke gain par 4 is the most important metric on the PGA Tour. It's consistently one of the most leading factors to high leaderboard success, and you can see it here. You have to come down to JT Poston, what's this, about 15 to 18 deep before you find somebody outside the top 30. It's really strong. Let's see if we can find the ranges here. 350 to 400. See, this is more akin to what last year's, say, 400 to 450 and 450 to 500. You have some decent finishes, but you have a miscut. A few miscuts here. 400 to 450. This is where it starts to gather some steam as the most important range. You've got 1 middling performance here, and surrounded by quite a few decent finishes. Do have some miscuts, but the 450 to 500, while it looks great up top, I mean, you've got 4 guys that missed the cut at that rank that are good at that range, and you saw that in 2021 as well. And then 2019, again, you'll see the par 4s, very, very important. 400 to 450, this is where it starts to really, really show its dominance. You come down to Sebastian Munoz, I'll say, is a middling performance at 36th. So to come to a clunker or miscut at Nick Watney, you know, what's this, about the same 16 to 18 guys? So in researching today, I found that 400 to 450, if there is a range to focus on in the par 4s, it's this one. So fun stuff there. We'll take a quick look at the par 5s. Let's see. Again, this is one of the very few courses that mitigates the importance of par 5s. You do have to make your birdies here because you're going to be struggling for pars the rest of the course here at Fantasy National. So it's not that they are, you know, not important at all, but you see, you know, 1.8 is, you know, tied for what, 5th most. It's just not an important factor here at PGA National. Yeah, you got your miscuts here in the 500 to 550 range. The longer par 5, still the same. We'll check 2020. Again, looks good up here, the 3 and the 4s and the 3s, but you're also -3s, -3, -2. You know, you had your cut makers at least. Decent run here, to be fair. Decent run there. Middling, clunker, middlings, and then 2 miscuts. And you'll see here, like, every single round, all of the par 5s, or at least both par 5s, measured to this range. So literally it is the same as the strokes gained par 5. So that tells me that 500 to 550, if it's important, or if par 5s are important, it would be this range. 2019, we see here, again, decent, miscut, clunker. Yeah. So I don't think I'm going to do too much in the par 5s this week, but if I do, I'm pretty much going to solo it out to this. We saw 2020. This is basically the same. 2021 did have some variance in length, but if I do par 5s, it's going to be of this length. Last thing I want to look at specifically as far as past performance is proximity. And I mentioned last night in the initial research that I wasn't sure how to approach shot distribution, but I don't really know how to gauge this, in the sense that it seems like, or obviously, you know, there are 8% more approach shots from 175 to 200 than there are on the average tour event. So you would think you would want to focus approach shots from this range. But when you come to at least last year's leaderboard, 175 to 200, it wasn't really all that strong. I mean, Hagee solo second was your best. You had some decent finish, but I mean, middling, clunker, missed cuts. And if I sort by just the leaderboard, I mean, you've got negatives all up and down the top part of the leaderboard at this range. So I didn't know how to take that. I went and checked previous years. Let's do proximity. Now, the total proximity this year in 2020 was pretty strong, and the 175 to 200 was pretty darn strong with it. You had a clunker at the lead, but you had to come down to Greg Chalmers before you missed a cut. But you still started having missed cuts after the top, maybe 10 to 12. And then 2019, proximity, again, I mean, you've got negatives all up and down the front part of this leaderboard. So how much is it going to play a factor? I don't know. At least the most prevalent one, I really don't. The data says it's not going to. The data simply says it's not going to. And there's a look at total proximity. I mean, you got your cut makers, sure, but you still got clunkers in there and a miscut. So, again, would be curious to hear your take on it. If there was a proximity, it'll surprise you on which one was the most correlating in terms of what Microsoft Excel says. And we'll check that here a little bit later. But now that we have a bit of a gauge on some of the metrics that we want to focus on, let's come back to the home page here at Fantasy National. Of course, we already looked at approach. We didn't look at off the tee, and it seemed like off the tee could be a bit of a factor here. So the past 36 rounds, back to the start of this PGA Tour season, the top off the tee players: Cameron Young, Keith Mitchell, Johnny Vegas, Sung Jae, Ryan Palmer, Seth Reeves, Hayden Buckley, Trey Mullinax, Brendan Steele, and Louis Oosthuizen. So probably no surprise here. Cameron Young really announced his presence at Riviera, just how well he drives the golf ball. Keith Mitchell always been great off the tee. Johnny Vegas is always good off the tee. Hey Darnell, yes, let's get it. Like I said last night, we're struggling the past 2 weeks. Let's get back on the winning ways here. So we're just looking at off the tee here. We just wrapped up some prior year leaderboard, data gathering, see what metrics we want to focus on. So we saw off the tee. We did approach last night. We did putting on Bermuda last night. One of the bigger things that I want to see is bogeys and possibly double bogeys avoided. So again, with no metrics, these are your top bogey avoiders since the start of the PGA Tour, this PGA Tour season. Denny McCarthy, Sung Jae, Mito, Mark Hubbard, Keith Mitchell, Alex Smalley, Brian Harmon, JJ Spawn, Bo Hostler, Patrick Rogers, and Russell Knox. Good stuff there. And you'll notice that Sung Jae is really the only one of these guys. Well, Sung Jae and Russell Knox are avoiding bogeys and double bogeys, and to a lesser extent Denny McCarthy as well. But let's check on difficult, scoring relative to difficult, and see if guys play difficult courses worse or better or whatnot. So your top bogey avoiders when rounds are difficult. And remember, Cameron Tringali has withdrawn. So your top 10 bogey avoiders on difficult rounds: Denny McCarthy is number 1, McCumber, Hughes, Palmer, Streb, Smalley, Keith Mitchell, Neiman, Aaron Rye, and Nick Watney. Hey, P. I appreciate you watch the replay. I was mentioning Darnell, who just jumped in chat as well. We just got done finishing looking at the prior leaderboards, trying to gather some metrics that we might think will play. And now we're seeing who in this field is good at those metrics. Right now we have bogeys avoided on difficult rounds. And you see here, really the only one that is good at avoiding bogeys and doubles is Aaron Rye. To a lesser extent, Mackenzie Hughes when it gets difficult. P, if you just now caught it, Cameron Tringali has withdrawn. So anytime you see Tringali, just throw him out the window, at least this week. I'm going to take off the scoring relative to par difficult here. Let's come into proximity. And again, I don't know if 175 to 200 is going to play. The prior leaderboard said not really, but if it does play, your top performers at that range of approach shots: Hudson Swafford, Lucas Glover, Ricky Fowler, Aaron Rye, Bronson Burgoon, Nick Hardy, Max McGreevy, Nate Lashley, Kitty Yama, and Russell Knox. So Knox has popped a few times here. Aaron Rye is popping. Lucas Glover, who plays this event well. Swafford has had a pretty darn good PGA Tour season so far. So interesting stuff there. But again, I don't know how much this is going to play a factor. Even though graphically it says that 8% more approach shots come from this range, that could be true, but it didn't really correlate to leaderboard success. To be honest, it really didn't. What the main thing that we saw, though, was just how important the par 3s are. This is going to be probably the most percent I put in the data model, this and approach. So let's look at par 3s. Strokes gained par 3. No filters, no short, no difficult, nothing. Just your top performers on par 3 so far this PGA Tour season. Beau Hossler, Russell Knox again, David Lipsky, Dylan Wu, Matthew Wolff, Stefan Jaeger, Tyler Duncan, Billy Horschel, Mark Hubbard, and Alex Noren. Sung Jae just outside the top 10. There's Joaquin Niemann. There's Mac Hughes. So a lot of these guys are starting to pop on various metrics. And we saw that if there was a length of par 3, it was this one. Just because on the scorecard, there is one at 226. So you know that those that will, with the tees moved around, it will come into this bucket sum. So of the par 3s that are most likely, at least the length that's most likely to be the factor, Beau Hossler, Zach Johnson, Matthew Wolff, Alex Smalley, Mac Hughes, Billy Horschel, C.T. Pan, Cameron Young, Stefan Jaeger, and Bryce Garnett. Richard, how you doing? Knox has terrible course history, right? We will see. I believe you are correct on that. I actually have that file up, and when we finish in Fantasy National here, probably in the next 5 minutes, Knox, we can check and see just how good or bad Knox plays here at PGA National. How did you do this past weekend? Did you end up using Martin Laird some? I ended up not using him at all. He rated just outside my top half. And he had a decent tournament. He tied for 39th, and he was very, very littly owned. So I hope you used him. I probably should have used him instead of some of the other guys that I used. But there's a look at the par 3s and the length of par 3s. Let's check par 4s really quickly, and then we'll move on to Microsoft Excel. The top performers on strokes gained, just par 4s in general, this PGA Tour season: Cameron Young, Denny McCarthy, Sung Jae, Mito, Mac Hughes, Matthias Schwab, Louis, Neiman, Brian Harmon, Taylor Moore, and JJ Spawn. And again, Richard, you just jumped in chat. I don't know if you're joining late or whatnot. Cameron Tringali has withdrawn. There's a few others, but Cameron Tringali is really the only one that's popping on the models. He has withdrawn. So just be mindful of that. And then the length of par 4s here that seem to matter the most at PGA National, the 400, 450. So these are your top par 4 length performers. JJ Spawn, Tyler Duncan, again, Tringali has withdrawn, so Novak is third. Mito Pereira, Camilo Villegas, McCarthy, Jason Duffner, Grayson Sigg, Cameron Young, and Sung Jae. Well, technically, I guess Brian Harmon and Chase Seifert as well. So a lot of these guys are popping on a multitude of factors. Sung Jae won in 2020. I haven't seen Matt Jones for a little bit. He's your defending champion. Cameron Young, who's just playing really, really good golf lately. McCarthy is popping a bit. Mito. So there's a look at the Fantasy National, factors and ranks of the metrics that I think will play here at PGA National. I'm going to come back to this tab in case we want to go back and forth to it, but right now I'm going to switch to Microsoft Excel, so give me a moment as I transition over to that, bring up chat, and we'll come to this first, just kind of rehash what we saw from Fantasy National. So last year you saw that off the tee was actually the most important, but generally it is strokes gained approach. Again, nothing really from this from this tab here. And the reason why I said double bogeys avoided, this is the Honda. So last year was the birdies that was the most important, but traditionally it was bogeys avoided. But take a look at the Genesis. This is updated through last week's tournament. That's a 19. That's a very, very strong correlation. But again, we saw the numbers in Fantasy National. They were 0.8. So how much is it truly a factor? It's debatable. But here is at PGA National at the Honda, it seems that bogeys avoided are more important than birdies. We saw that par threes, very, very, very important. Let me scroll over for you all. There's the par threes. And the reason why this number doesn't seem too important, just take a look at, say par fours. You see how high the number is par fives, as PGA National mitigates any importance in par fives. But this 37, when you come and compare it against other courses, the par threes over here, can you see it? No. So the par threes here at PGA National are 6% more important than the average tour event that has a full field, and places that we can get information from. So like the Masters is included because they're proprietary. Let's see. Don't have the Scottish is a new event. Like Barracuda is a stable format, so I don't have stats for that. But of the events that have a full field, the Honda is 6% more important on strokes gained par 3. So it's just playing out right there that par 3s are so very important. And you see this outlier here. I mean, this number comes down even more when you remove that outlier, which I'll show you the outliers here in a bit. Par 4s, it's about tour average for the importance of par 4s. Mentioned par 5s. Sorry, we'll come back to the par 4s real quick. 400, 450 is the most important metric or most important length. I disregard the 500 plus because it doesn't have a full 5 years. And the last 2 years, it's been not important at all. Par 5s, very, very, very mitigated, not important at all. And then lastly, again, as I keep talking about proximity, I don't know how much it's going to play. Most of the approach shots come from this range, but it only has a 61. Whereas supposedly the most important range is 125 to 150. But do I believe that? I don't know. I don't think I do. And the total proximity is that figure there. So let's move to Richard's point. Let's take a look at some prior performance here at PGA National. And I was gonna, let's go ahead and do the filter here. So we'll look straight off for Russell Knox. There he is. Russell Knox. Yep, you would be pretty correct, Richard. He's 1 for 5. So this is missed cuts. So he's 1 for 5 in making the cut with an average of an 85th place finish. So it's not great. Now his irons at this course have traditionally been okay. It's just that he doesn't make a putt. Is that something to do with Bermuda? Maybe. And again, I could go back to Fantasy National, but that view is going to be skewed. I don't want to keep jumping back and forth on you all on that. But there you go. He has had a poor performance in putting. Now that I know where he is, I'm going to remove these filters so you all can see which stats are which. So he was 85th. There he is. I'll remove those. So Russell Knox here at the top. Putting, pretty poor. He is all right with his irons here. He hits fairways at this course. Not great at birdies or avoiding bogeys. Par 3s, he is right at field average. Par 4s, he is pretty darn bad at. And then the length of the par 4s, still not good. So yeah, it looks like your assessment is pretty spot on there, Richard. Let's see, some other guys that we can maybe take a look at. I'm going to start sorting by some various stats. And again, jump in chat if you want to see some guys who are ranked where in whatever metric. I'm going to start with off the tee. We noticed that off the tee seemed to be rather important. At least it was one of the most important factors last year. So when you sort by strokes gained off the tee, Tommy Fleetwood's number one. Again, he's only played it twice in the past 5 years, but he has played it well. Lowry, is that what you meant, Darnell? Shane Lowry? Here's Tommy. There's Gary Woodland. Yeah, Lowry. Okay. We'll get to him in just a second. Let me finish this this sorted little thing here. What metrics are you valuing the most? Make sure you go and rewatch, because I'm sure I won't hit every single one. But the par threes are so astronomically important here at PGA National. That and strokes gained approach is where I'm starting my data model on Wednesday. Hopefully you just saw that the par threes are 6% more important than the average tour event here. Strokes gained approach is generally one of the most important, but in Fantasy National, when you went from the top 10s to the top 5s to the winners, I mean the strokes gained approach bar just skyrocketed each time. So it's extremely important. So I'm probably going to start my data model there. I think I'm going to focus more on bogeys than, say, birdies or even doubles. If there is a length of par 3, it's between these two. I'm generally probably going this one. But it's more so just the par 3s that are just extremely important. The par 4s are 400 to 450 in plus just regular par 4s. If the par 5s are going to be included this week, it'll be just this range. But I don't know how much the par 5s are going to play, to be honest with you. And then I put it up for a question last night. Still going to have the open question, like, what would you do with proximity? We saw that most of the approach shots come from 175 to 200, but it doesn't lead to leaderboard success. So I'm curious to hear your all's take. But to finish the strokes gained off the tee here real quick, so you've got Tommy Fleetwood. I mentioned Gary Woodland. Anytime you have a club down course, pay attention to Gary Woodland. He has played this event very well. Johnny Vegas, always good off the tee. Ryan Palmer's 3 for 4. Sung Jae. Lucas Glover has played this event very well in the past. Cage Lee, Brandon Hagee. So there's a look at some strokes gained off the tee guys. I'll do a couple of metrics here. I promise I will not forget Shane Lowry for you, Darnell. But since I am on the sorting of particular metrics, I'm going to keep on that for now. So let's take a look at strokes gained approach just here at Fantasy National at PGA National. Again, Tommy Fleetwood's up there. You've got Harry Higgs, who's 2 for 2, very good with the irons here. There's Gary Woodland again. There's Sam Ryder. He's 2 for 2. Aaron Wise, he was popping a lot last night as well. Charles Schwartzel plays this event well. There's Palmer again. Luke Donald, he's only 2 for 4, but he's hit his irons well here. Steele, Lucas Herbert in 1 try. Nick Watney, somebody that was surprising to me. He was positive off the tee. Pretty good with his irons, and he putt well here, or at least well enough. So that was surprising for me. So there's a look at the strokes gained approach. Just a couple more. We're going to look at par 3s. The strokes gained par 3. And there it is for you. So the best player, strokes gained par 3s, Andrew Novak, again, 1 time. And he had a clunker of a made cut. But Tommy Fleetwood, Martin Keimer, who's here this week, Bo Hostler, Aaron Wise, Daniel Berger, Noren. Noren's got some pretty low finishes, it looks like. Sepp Straka, Billy Horschel, somebody I like a lot this week. Anytime you put Horschel on Bermuda, you got to think about him. Billy Horschel loves to putt on Bermuda. Mac Hughes. So one more. I'm going to look at the par fours, 400 to 450. I'm pretty darn confident that that is the range of par fours, other than just strokes gained par four. 400 to 450. And let me scroll over so I can put it at the left for you all. All right. So Chase Koepka, one time. Tommy Fleetwood again. So he's been at the top or near the top on pretty much all of these metrics. Alex Noren, Lucas Glover again, Kramer Hickok, Sam Ryder again. There's Ricky again. I can't get there with Ricky. He's got to show me sustained success. He teases you for, a round or two or maybe even a tournament, but I'm just not there. Johnny Vegas, Nick Watney again. There's your defending champ, Matt Jones. Well, there you go. So there's at least the list in order now that I screwed up the view for you all. Let me sort again by finish, and then we'll look at Shane Lowry. So average finish, and I want smallest to largest. And it should be Fleetwood atop. Yeah. All right, so let's look at Shane Lowry. Look, there you go. There you go, Darnell. He's 3 for 3 here at PGA National with an average of a top 35. The one thing that I see right off the bat that's concerning is that he's pretty mediocre, at least here, with his irons. It looks like he's gotten around this place, around the green. And around the green is, it's important, but it's certainly the least important of the other three umbrella stats. So, does he know the course well enough to just rely on the short game? Maybe. But that is a concerning thing when I see it right off the bat. Without doing an extensive dive into it. He does hit the greens here at a fairly solid clip. He is decent enough to gain birdies and avoid bogeys. There you go. There's something else to be worried about. He does not play the par threes well here at all. -1. So you can't argue with the 3 for 3. Absolutely can't argue with that. But there are some underlying issues in the statistics that give me some pause, Darnell. Is how I'll put that. Let's see. Anyone else? Do you want to jump up and see some other guys? It's nothing to laugh about. If you want to ask a player, be more than happy to pump him up or shoot him down or whatever. I can just go by what the numbers say. It was a legitimate question. 3 for 3 with an average of top 35. It seems like that would be good, and then you kind of look into these other metrics, the underlying metrics. Chase Koepka, par 3 god. Well, I'll come back to Kodaira. Chase Koepka is. I picked Chase Koepka one time in the fall, and I vividly remember that I said at the minimum you could do worse than Chase Koepka, and we'll review how that went at the end of the PGA Tour season in the good calls and bad calls. If I lose, I lose. Yeah, you have to choose what you're willing to lose to. Last week I was willing to lose to the Euros, Paul Casey and Sergio and Rory, and I lost. 2 guys from my neck of the woods, Doug Gim and Nick Hardy. Sweet. Okay, so let's take a look at Satoshi Kodaira first. Kodaira. Filter. Probably didn't even have to highlight all that. Satoshi Kodaira. It doesn't look like he's playing this week. Is he a late addition, Richard? Because I did this probably Saturday night or Sunday. If he's a new addition, I will need to check on that kind of outside the show. because I'm not seeing him. Because as soon as the field comes out on Friday night. And I generally try to work on this spreadsheet on Saturday or early Sunday, just to take care of all the things that I have to take care of to get prepared for the week. So I kind of do that first and just gather all the guys. He was second alternate and should be in. Okay. I believe you. I just, like I said, I built this sheet probably Saturday or Sunday. So instead of going through the rigmarole of pulling up the file and all that stuff, let me take care of a couple of these other questions, and then I think there's a way I can find Kodaira for you. It won't be color coded and pretty, is what I'll say. Doug Gim and Nick Hardy. All right, let's try it. Doug Gim, Mackenzie Hughes. Yeah, so Mackenzie Hughes has popped quite a bit. So here's Doug Gim for you. Not good. 0 for 2 with an average finish of 112. So that's pretty darn low. It looks like the main culprit is putting. So if he has a hot putting week, you never know. But Doug Gim is well known for being a decent ball striker and a terrible putter. So nothing new there. Let's see some of the underlying metrics. He does play the par 3s okay. The par 4s are really bad. Negative 5.75. So I think it's a pretty good no for the Gim Reaper. Exactly. The Gim Reaper is not reaping this week. That's how I'll put that on a terrible joke. And then you said Nick Hardy. I don't know how much Nick Hardy is exposed. Yeah, he has not played this course. I would have to go back to Fantasy National, and I want to finish up the Excel portion if there's enough time, which it looks like we're going to be running over a little bit. I can try to find Nick Hardy a little bit, but he has not played this event before, so that's why he's not coming up here. Mackenzie Hughes. Here's Mackenzie Hughes. Now he is 4 for 5 in making the cut. Average finish of 58th. Again, kind of like to Darnell's question on Shane Lowry, a little bit to be concerned about because the irons have not been good here. But Mackenzie Hughes is always known for being good around the green and a good putter. So at least it's consistent with what his game is. He has not hit a lot of the greens historically. He does gain birdies at a decent clip. Par 3s he has played very well here at PGA National. Par 4s not so much. And the length of the par 4s about field average. So I like Mackenzie Hughes. How much I'm going to be using this week kind of depends on pricing. And again, I always do DFS on Wednesday, so I'll look at prices beginning tomorrow. I have no idea on prices right now. I would say there's enough to like with Mackenzie Hughes because he did pop on quite a few of these of the models, at least in terms of his peers or his other players since the beginning of this calendar or the beginning of this PGA Tour season. So there's something to like there. But he does not have the greatest prior form. Let's see. Before I forget, let me see if I can pull up the Satoshi Kodaira. Let's see. I gotta scroll over because I've got about a gajillion tabs, and that's only a slight exaggeration. All right, Honda summary. Satoshi Kodaira. Let's see. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. And again, I apologize, it's not going to be color coded. I think this is total. Yeah, so let me scroll over. Here you're getting a little bit of an inside view of the complicated mess that is this spreadsheet, putting all this together. So Satoshi Kodaira, he has missed 2 cuts, He's got an average finish of a 101 and third. Let's see, that's off the tee, not great. Approach, not too bad. Around the green and putting, not great. Let's see, I believe this is the par threes. And again, I apologize. Like I said, that just I grabbed the people that I know are playing. Yeah, so par threes has not played them great. Par fours, not good at all. Well, not as bad, but still not good. The length, not good either. Now, total proximity is okay. But that's really all I'm seeing here. And again, sorry for the data intensive portion right now. I just didn't have Satoshi Kodaira since he's an alternate. I think before I go, I do want to highlight the outlier kind of math and such that I've done the past couple of weeks. So anything highlighted in red is what I call a negative outlier, in the sense that it played very important that year and it generally doesn't. So you see the general or the usual importance here at PJ Nationals of 51. You take out last year's around the green and it plays to a 54. Anything, however, that's highlighted in blue is what I call a positive outlier. Putting. So the old importance was like a 40. You take out this high outlier, it now becomes a 37, so more important. So as I went through all of the metrics here, these percentages are what the new percentages related to other full field events. So for example, I mentioned how par threes were 6% more important than the average full field event. That didn't change when I went through this. So now around the green was, probably negative 2.8 or something. Now it's negative 3.07. This got a bit more important. Greens got a bit more important, still not as important as the average tour event. But this is why I focused on bogeys. It has been traditionally more important, and it's traditionally been a more consistent metric than the birdies. And here, this score, so line 8, the importance factor, line 9 is the consistency factor. So that's why I've been focusing on bogeys as opposed to birdies. You see, again, I stress all the time, par 4 is the most important metric, and it's consistent here. Par 3s is pretty darn important. Hasn't been the most consistent, but if you take out this pretty big outlier here, you see that it kind of comes down a little bit, 33.62 new to 37, so it comes down quite a bit. Let's see. Par 4s, there's another reason why I was so high on 400 to 450. This is a positive outlier. So when you take it out, it now becomes 35.5, and a very damn consistent metric from year over year. 500 to 550, really darn consistent. Par 5s become more consistent with this outlier taken out, but it's still only a 45. So that is a look at the outliers. I'll come back to the past performance view for you all. It's sorted by top finish. So I'll leave you all on this, and again, if you want to jump in chat really quickly, ask for maybe one or two more guys, because we've went over for about 10 minutes or so, which I don't mind, but I do try to keep these shows at about an hour to stay consistent. And again, I'd be curious to hear your all's take on the proximity. Again, a lot of the approach shots here at PJ National come from 175 to 200. But when you look at the leaderboard, it's not really all that important, at least not in terms of high leaderboard success. So Yeah, I would be curious to hear what you all think on that. David Lipsky has not played this event. You know what? Since we're getting a couple of questions, there was somebody else that was in. It was Nick Hardy. So let's go. I'm going to go ahead and switch back really quickly to Fantasy National, and we'll check these two guys for you all. Let's do Højgaard. He is brand new. Nikolai Højgaard. He is brand new. I don't know anything about him. I really don't. So if you find something, you're probably going to know as much or more than me, to be honest with you, because I don't keep up with DP World Tour stats. Maybe I should. I focus all my attention on the PGA Tour. Brand new money. Hey, maybe. We'll see how he rates in the model, if he even has any stats to rate. So the first guy was Nick Hardy. You'll have him. Yeah. Hey. Depending on ownerships and stuff, that could be a big pivot, big leverage. So here's Nick Hardy real quick. Off the tee, pretty darn good. Strokes gain approach, okay. Let's dig into him just a bit here. Bermuda is his best surface. I want to look at mainly par 3 efficiency. Okay. And then par 4. So the par 4s have not been good lately. And the range of par 4s have not been good, or length of par 4s. So enough to be concerned, I guess. Let's do, there was Smotherman. Who was the first? Lipsky. So I'll do Lipsky and then Smotherman, and then we're going to call it a show. So here's David Lipsky. Pretty balanced. 61st, 45th, 53rd, and then putting has been lacking, we'll say. Bermuda is his worst surface, but not by much. I mean, again, pay attention to your y-axis. It's only negative 10th, so that's not terrible. Coming off a miscut at the Genesis, but 3 straight cuts made before that, including a top 15 at the Amex. Again, this is very crude. I could go into it and all that stuff, but par 3 is very, very good. At least lately, very good, and traditionally very good. That's promising. He's got some really high par 3 finishes. And then par 4s. Let's see. Par 4s, okay. He had a very good Amex par 4s. The length of the par 4s, about field average. We'll see how he rates it. Again, a lot of this will kind of be seen Wednesday in the DFS Tactics show. But Smotherman, 2 very good stats. The short game, not so much. Bermuda, he's more of a POA guy, at least from the few rounds that he has. But the irons are there. Goodness gracious. Farmers, Pebble. Did have a really poor Amex, but it happens. I like the irons, that's for sure. Par 3, not great. And par 4s, very good. And the length of the par 4s are good. There's a lot to like there with Smotherman, at least at a quick glance. So I'll leave you all on the kind of strokes gained total just in the past 36 rounds. Guys, really appreciate the support and tuning in. It's always fun to interact with you all. P and Richard and Darnell, you all keep coming back. I'm thankful for it. Come tune in Wednesday. We'll have our DFS Tactics planned out. See if I can make up for the past 2 weeks when I've had a really, really bad waste management, Phoenix Open, and then last week was still a losing week, but kind of it saved me because I had quite a bit of Neiman that saved the week. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Make sure to tune in Wednesday for the DFS Tactics. But for any wagers that you've already made this week at the Honda, for any wagers you're thinking about making at the Honda this week, and until I see you Wednesday night, the DFS Tactics show. May all your bets be profitable.